Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like and subscribe for more. Today we're diving into a story, really, of global trade and superpower rivalry and a multi-billion-dollar deal swirling around the Panama Canal. This waterway, it connects the Atlantic and the Pacific, right? It's not just like some impressive feat of engineering. It's seriously like a linchpin of global commerce. And recently things have gotten, really interesting. BlackRock, it's an American investment giant, is stepping in. They're buying two key ports near the canal. But here's the thing. They're buying them from a company that's based in Hong Kong, CK Hutchison. And this is causing some raised eyebrows all the way to the White House, especially when you consider some of the things that President Trump has said in the past. So let's rewind a bit. President Trump, he's never been shy about expressing his concerns about Chinese influence over the Panama Canal. He even went so far as to suggest that the U.S. should, quote, take it back, end quote, even though Panama has had total control of it since 1999. And he also claimed, and there's no evidence of this, that China's actually the one operating the canal. And this tension, it's not just talk. Trump straight up demanded that Panama lower the fees that U.S. ships have to pay to use the canal. Otherwise, he said the U.S. might try to regain control. He even suggested, and this is incorrect, that American vessels can actually go through the canal without paying any fees. Naturally, Panama pushed back. They said very clearly they haven't changed the fees and they have no intention of giving up control over their own canal. And then things escalated. When the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, went to Panama, his message was basically, if China continues to have influence over the canal, the U.S. is going to retaliate. He was very blunt. He said the situation was unacceptable, and he very strongly suggested that the U.S. might take action to protect its interests. Rubio even told Panamanian officials that President Trump believes that the current level of Chinese influence is a direct threat to the canal, and that it goes against the treaty between the U.S. and Panama. The one that, guarantees the canal's neutrality and lays out how it's supposed to be run. Panama's response to all this pressure was measured, but also firm. They completely rejected Trump's demand to, give control back. But they did agree to one thing, an audit of the ports on both sides of the canal, the ones that are operated by the Chinese, and the U.S. would get to see all the findings. They also made another strategic move. They announced that they weren't going to renew their agreement with China on the Belt and Road Initiative when it expires next year. In fact, they're even looking into ways to maybe get out of the agreement sooner. And right smack in the middle of all this, you have BlackRock entering the scene. This American investment firm is making a big move. They're buying those two ports, the important ones near the canal, from CK Hutchison for a cool $19 billion. It's actually part of the bigger deal, a $22.8 billion deal. That includes more than 40 ports in 23 countries. Interestingly, none of the ports in this deal are in China. The agreement for the Panama Canal ports, they expect it'll be signed by April 2nd. And the bigger deal, it very specifically leaves out any of the ports that Hutchison owns in China. Now, CK Hutchison, they insist that the sale has absolutely nothing to do with recent political news about the Panama ports. But the timing is definitely, suspicious, especially when you think about how BlackRock has been, actively briefing both the White House and Congress about the acquisition. The deal itself came together really fast through what's been described as a rapid process. So could this move by BlackRock be a way to calm the U.S. down about the Chinese influence over the canal? It's definitely possible. Having an American company own those ports, it might be seen as a way to balance out that perceived Chinese presence and, a way for the U.S. to make sure its interests are safe in this super important waterway. But it's not a sure thing, not yet. The acquisition still needs approval from different regulatory bodies. And what's going to happen in the long run for the U.S., China, and Panama, we don't really know yet. It's a complicated situation, lots of moving parts. And we're going to break it all down right here on the Deep Dive. Stay tuned. To really get this, to understand how important all this is, we need to go back, look at the history of the Panama Canal. It was finished in 1914. It's like a total marvel of engineering. I mean, it lets ships completely skip that super long and dangerous trip around the tip of South America. And it, quickly became really essential for international trade. And, obviously it also became a focal point, I guess you could say, for global power dynamics. The U.S. saw how strategically important it was. And they played a major role in actually building it. And they controlled it for a good chunk of the 20th century. But this control, it wasn't without its problems. A lot of people in Panama and in other countries too thought it was like a violation of Panama's sovereignty. After years and years of really intense negotiations, the U.S. finally signed those treaties with Panama. In 1977, they agreed to, gradually hand over control. It all led up to the full transfer on, get this, December 31st, 1999. It was a huge moment, historically. It showed that Panama was in charge of its own territory. And it also signaled a change, a shift in the global balance of power. But the story, it doesn't end there. As China's economy got bigger, so did their interest in the Panama Canal. Chinese companies, this included CK Hutchison, they started putting a lot of money into ports and infrastructure projects all around the canal. And this made the U.S. nervous, so people saw China getting more and more powerful there as, a possible challenge to the U.S.'s dominance in the region. And these concerns, they just got so much bigger during the Trump administration situation. They saw China rising up as like a direct threat to what the U.S. wanted. Trump's talk about taking back the canal, even though it was Panama's, it made the relationship worse. When he demanded lower fees for U.S. ships, a lot of people saw it as him, trying to pressure Panama with their economy and basically undermine their independence. But Panama, they held their ground. They refused to give in to what Trump wanted. He said they have the right to run the canal however they see fit. Now, when they agreed to audit those ports, the ones the Chinese operate, yeah, some people saw that as them giving in to the U.S. a little. But you could also see it as Panama being smart. It lets them show they're being transparent, and it reinforces their control over everything. And then we got this BlackRock deal, right? It just adds, another layer of complication to this whole thing. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward. A U.S. company buys stuff from a company in Hong Kong. Well, we can't just ignore the politics, can we? The timing, how big the deal is, and the fact that BlackRock has been, talking to people in the U.S. government about it. It all suggests there's more going on. It could be like a strategic move by the U.S. to counter China's influence in the area and reassert itself near the canal. So this leads to some pretty big questions. Will this deal actually make the U.S. less worried about China? Or is it just going to shift the power in a different way? What's it going to do to Panama's relationship with the U.S. and China? And this is the most important one, I think. What does it mean for the future of the canal itself? The Panama Canal is super important for global trade. It handles so much of the world's maritime traffic, it's crazy. It keeps those goods flowing between Asia, the Americas, and Europe. If it runs smoothly, it's so important for global supply chains and the whole world economy. If anything disrupts the canal, anything, whether it's political stuff, security threats, or even natural disasters, it's going to have huge consequences. And so this whole situation, it shows the tough spot Panama's in. They have to protect their own sovereignty, right? And manage the canal in a way that works for them. But at the same time, they've got to deal with these competing interests from, global superpowers like the US and China. Each one wants to secure its own strategic and economic advantage, just like a high stakes game, geopolitical chess, I guess. And Panama, they're right in the middle of the board. It's like the Panama Canal kind of shows us a smaller version of what's happening in the world. All these economic interests, political ambitions, and historical stuff. It all comes together and, shapes the future of our crazy interconnected world. This whole situation, it really reminds us how complicated things are globally. In terms of global affairs and the tough situations that countries face when superpowers are competing. It shows just how important diplomacy is and cooperation and sticking to international rules if we want to, make it through these choppy waters. As we go forward, we got to watch what's happening in Panama. They give us a good look into how the power is shifting in the world. And they show us those potential flashpoints that could totally change the global order. The Panama Canal is not the end of the story. It's about global trade, it's about strategic moves, and it's about a country trying to be independent when there's so much international pressure. We don't know what'll happen next, but one thing's for sure. The stakes are high. What happens there affects everyone.